Hello, I'm Andy Martens. Welcome to Civic Affairs for another episode, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome the CFO and the Treasurer of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, Shelley Schell, for her first appearance on ONNtv. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy day to come and talk to us a little bit. I was wondering, to start off, a brief background before you came to the city, what you were doing for our viewers that might not know.
Well, before I came to the city, I was employed with a private sector manufacturer in a financial managerial role, and I was there for 12 years. From there, I came to the city. I've been with the city for 15 years. Started as a manager of finance and then was promoted to the manager of finance and budgets. In 2015, I was promoted to the CFO and treasurer.
Great, yeah, that's right. You just didn't get to the top. You paid your dues, and it's wonderful to see the promotion within. The CFO's role is much more than numbers, and as you know, as I know, but can you briefly let our viewers know what else your role entails?
Well, the CFO and treasurer's role is really two roles. One is statutory, and one is more of a strategic type role. So a municipal treasurer is actually a statutory officer that's appointed by council per the Municipal Act. So that role is the one that's responsible for your day-to-day financial affairs in the municipality, providing council with such information with respect to the financial affairs of the municipality as it requires or requests. And it's also delivering the efficient financial operations and safeguarding the municipal assets. The CFO role is more of a strategic role. It goes beyond the efficient financial operations. So this is the role that's the key contributor to strategic planning by developing financing and investment strategies to support the long-term plans and ensure the financial stability. As well, the role is kind of a catalyst to promote and drive change in process improvement.
How do you see the roles splitting up in your daily workload, the CFO versus treasurer? Is it a 70-30 or is it a 50-50 split?
I don't think you can really split it because both kind of merge into the other. So everything that you do every day is always looking at long-term planning, etc. I also have a really good staff that works with me that helps ensure that all of the financial operations are in place. So I can't really say there's a split as such.
Right.
It's ongoing.
But it's great that you were with the city for 15 years because now you know the kind of situations that will come up with the CFO's position rather than coming from the outside, and it's a much bigger learning curve.
It did provide me a lot of experience. I had some really good mentors through the process, and you learn a lot. But one day doesn't necessarily predict the next with municipalities, and it's always good to have that background to help you through it.
Great. Yeah, the budget was passed about a week and a half ago or so. And I'm just curious for our viewers, when does the process actually start that finished a short time ago?
The budget process pretty much happens all year round. Probably in the spring is when the real work starts for the next budget year. That's when we start confirming the employee complement, which determines our salaries and benefits. Once we have that complement, finance will do the calculation for the salaries and benefits, and then we'll provide those to the departments, and then they'll take that information and work on their departmental budgets.
Right.
So it's ongoing throughout the year. Typically, the budget comes to council at the beginning of December for deliberations. It was delayed this year, obviously, because of the election.
Now, a lot of the viewers may not know, just follow up on that council is not responsible for the entire budget of the city. Can you roughly let people know how much of the budget this council is responsible for?
Well, council ultimately has to approve the levy that is used to calculate the tax rates, but a portion of that is associated with levy and local boards. Council has very little, if any, opportunity to make any changes to that. So of our levy increase this year, 0.99% of the 3.54 was associated to the levy boards. and the local boards. The other piece, the 2.55, is related to city services. These are your services that you see every day, your garbage pickup, your roads, your recreation and culture, etc., that they have more of a direct responsibility over. But even with those, a lot of those services are mandated by the province, so they really don't have a lot of say in what services they can and cannot provide.
That's right, and we'll get into the grant a little bit later that luckily it ended up on the right side of it with the city, but the mayor was right on the money in terms of moving ahead with the budget. Can you let us know how the amount is created, how much the individual residential tax will go up? That will be coming sometime next month. In terms of, does the 3.53 translate into a $100 increase for the average household or that kind of thing?
Well, when you look at the tax rates, a lot of it is based on how it's allocated between the different property classes. So simply put, tax rates are just the levy requirement, which we've just passed through the budget, divided by the total taxable assessment. So when the residential rate is calculated, that is equal to 1. Now there's also tax ratios which determine the weighting amongst the other different property classes. So to say what the increase is going to be, it's going to depend on the property tax class.
Right.
And whether there was growth.
And people don't often forget this. There is a chance, is there not, that your taxes could go down instead of going up?
It really depends on what your assessment is.
Yeah.
So when the last assessment came in, if you were below the average assessment increase based on market value, then you're not going to experience the same level of increase as others that are at that average increase.
Is the assessment usually is the key point, isn't it? How this thing is guided.
Assessment determines your share of the levy increase. So yes, it will have a huge impact in what an individual will pay for taxes.
Now, when will the city make that decision on the amounts? Will come next month sometime, I would think.
The plan is to come to the March 18th meeting with the tax rates and the scenarios and a recommendation to council on what staff recommends.
Now, every year you kind of get appeals too, and that's just part of the process, isn't it? People aren't satisfied and they chose to appeal.
Correct. They can, through the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, an individual or a corporation can appeal their assessment if they don't feel it's fair. So usually the question we ask is, if you were to sell your property today, is that what you would accept as an offer? So that kind of gives you a good indication as to whether you feel your property assessment is fair or not.
Great, Shelley. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with Shelley Schell, the CFO of the City of Sault Ste. Marie. We'll be right back.
At 4:45, discover all kinds of treasures and never pay more than $5. Inventory is restocked every Saturday, and you can find anything from electronics to household items, toys, and much, much more. On Saturday, everything is $5, and the price goes down throughout the week, ending with 25 cents on Friday. We restock weekly with new items from various big box stores, so you never know what treasures you can find. Come visit us at 4:45, 2510 Ashman Street in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan.
I need a new phone. What do you use your phone for mostly?
Work, play.
Oh, you mean everything.
One that won't run out of battery when Joyce from accounting is doing the Running Man.
Who else wants to see that Running Man demo?
The Samsung Galaxy Note 9. It's a great phone with a powerful all-day battery. We got the best phone for you for a great price. And you can choose your carrier.
A little Running Man?
Just a little. There.
Nice.
I hope no one saw that. Whew.
Where was she when I went phone shopping?
Have a great business idea but don't know where to start? Need help taking your business to the next level? C2C Business Services can be your guide in navigating the path of entrepreneurship, with services ranging from grant funding support, access to service experts, market information, and helping your business adopt new technologies to create and foster a culture of innovation for ongoing success. Call C2C Business Services and let them be your first step in taking your entrepreneurial dreams from concept to commerce. C2C Business Services is a division of the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center.
Welcome back to Civic Affairs. We're chatting with Shelley Schell, the CFO of the City of Sault Ste. Marie. 3.53, Shelley, that was the tax rate. Some people feel it could have been lower. I guess you hear that every tax year. Not only now that you're the CFO, but when you were part of the finance department in previous years as well.
Correct, Annie. Nobody wants to see a tax increase. Everybody has tight budgets themselves personally, whether you're a business or an individual. So it is something that we are cognizant of as we put our budgets together. As I said previously, our levy is really made up of two parts. One is the city's budget, that this is for the services it provides, and the other is for the levy and local boards. So the increase to the city services was 2.55%, or the 3.54. It's based on the cost of doing business as well as other items that were amended and approved by council. So to bring this lower would likely require reducing service levels. Staff is currently engaged in a service level profile project, which will provide a foundation for reviewing service levels. And it'll identify costs and some benefits associated with the services offered and measure performance against the desired service level. So we're hoping through this project that we'll be able to identify additional efficiencies as well as communicate better to the community the different services that the city provides and the level to which they provide it.
I would say that's the way to go, and people have to keep in mind that 2.55 was the increase. Again, like you mentioned, the boards and all of that, the 0.99 was not within council's mandate to do anything about it, but some feel that the budget shouldn't go up more than the cost of living, and you've heard that before too, and it just doesn't work that way in a perfect world.
Well, when you talk about the cost of living, a lot of people use a measure of CPI. Now, the basket of goods that's included within CPI isn't necessarily the same basket of goods that indicate the inflation factor for the city. So that's another area that we are looking at, is what is the appropriate measure of inflation for the city so that we can communicate again better to council, to the community, to our own department and staff, what is a fair level of increase that we can maintain.
The thing is maybe we'll talk about Sudbury now, because the point I want to bring is that their tax increase was 3.6. They have double the population that we do. So the argument that people I've heard on the street, and I've got my ear to the ground more than most people as far as municipal politics, I've heard, well, if Sault Ste. Marie was 110,000 people, we'd have a lower tax rate, but Sudbury just proved that that's not always correct.
You can't always base it on the size of the population, because there's other factors that play into it also when you look at different budgetary increases. You've got to look at the demographics as well as the different economics of the area. Is there growth? If there's growth in an area, you have an opportunity to spread that levy a little further amongst the tax base. So it's not really comparing apples to apples. When we provide metrics to council and to the community, we also look at different factors such as affordability. This is based on the income of the community and where we stand, and we'll compare to other communities also on the same basis. There's a study that's called the BMA study. A lot of municipalities in Ontario participate in it, and they provide a lot of good metrics for comparison. You'll find that on the city's website, and I encourage people to look at it so that you can kind of see where our city stands in comparison to others.
And you realize that, the next question is you expand the tax base, and I've heard you say previously that you realize that the industrial tax base needs to get bigger in Sault Ste. Marie, that you can't always have the residential tax base paying the rates, taking the balance, and but it's a long process to getting there.
It's not something that's going to happen overnight, and when we provided the long-term tax policy recommendations to council, that was one of the areas that we identified. The tax ratio is high for the industrial class. It's not something that you can reduce overnight. We have put in a community improvement plan to encourage industrial growth, because if there is assessment growth, it provides a larger pie in which to share the
That's right.
tax burden amongst, thus bringing down the tax ratio. So that is one area that we definitely look at. Whether it's a growth in the industrial, it could be growth in the commercial also. Any type of growth will help the city in the tax base.
Well, the Algoma Steel thing was rectified, and we're moving on. And it's not that simple, but I can sympathize with people, business taxes coming to me. Well, I'm paying this X number of dollars. What am I getting more for my tax dollars? But it's not that simple as far as putting exact value to getting more when you're paying more.
Well, that is one thing that we've been trying to communicate over the last 2 years. And through our corporate communications area, we have done some different social media type blasts talking about the quality of services, the type of services. This year, we really tried to focus on the value of the services. What services do you get through the city, and what is the value that you receive for your tax dollar? Everybody wants to see that value that you're paying into.
Right, Tessa does a wonderful job. She keeps front and center on Facebook and on Twitter. I'm seeing it all over the place. But as the CFO, you certainly, you know how important expanding the tax classes and base is across the board.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you talk about assessment growth, though, you have to qualify that. This is new builds. It's not just market value changes. So if your house goes up in value, that is not assessment growth. Assessment growth actually results in new revenue. So the tax levy in the end is being spread amongst a bigger base. So if you think of it as a pie, you've got more pieces of that pie to share around, right? So it reduces the burden on the rest of the base. So typically too, when we have significant growth, you have to keep in mind that if you have a large scale growth, it is going to require higher capital and operational requirements as well. Our growth isn't necessarily at that level quite yet, but it would be a nice problem to have in the future in order to address that. It means the city is growing.
Just so the viewers understand, the ones that say, well, the tax should only increase one cost of living, a 1% is not that easy to reduce. Had council somehow been able to do that from 2.55, that's a lot of expenditure to reduce it by 1%.
A 1% decrease is just over $1 million. So it is significant. It's very difficult to decrease. You have to remember that the city is also a service organization, and as such, our highest costs are in our salaries and benefits. So if you decrease services, you're also decreasing jobs in the community. But these are things that we have to consider. We have to look at doing things more efficiently and more effectively, and those are projects that we do have on the forefront as a city.
And that what you sent to the mayor and council was pretty well dead on. People need to give you and your department credit, because there wasn't much difference between your recommendation and what council approved.
Well, they did tweak it. In the end, it came down to the same number, but they removed certain items and put, one of the key ones was the LED street lighting. That was going to be expended and paid for over a period of 9 years. We extended that period out and allocated some of that savings to the taxpayer rather than them waiting till 9 years to see that savings from the LED streetlights. So with that savings, there was about $440,000 that was saved. That money was used by council to add other service level increases, if you recall, when they did the budget. So $300,000 was added for Sunday service for transit. There was a couple other smaller items that were also added. So they do end up tweaking it to address the service levels that they hear from their constituents.
Their reduction, I guess council reduced it about $39,000 when between what you and your staff recommended versus what the final figure was.
Yeah, the net decrease was under $50,000 net change. Yeah,
that's right. That means
so basically came out to the same. Yeah.
People need to realize that means you and your staff are doing your job. If you can, it wasn't like 200,000 difference.
No, there wasn't significant decreases.
All right, let's take another quick break, and we'll be right back with Shelley Schell, the CFO of the City of Sault Ste. Marie.
As a nation, Canada has participated in all of the major world conflicts. In the Sioux area alone, over 10,000 men and women have enlisted in the Canadian Armed Forces. The Veterans Commemorative Monument aims to cement the legacy of the Canadian Armed Forces in stone. It will highlight the bravery, strength, courage, and sacrifice of our servicemen and women. In times of need, they volunteered to serve us. Now it is our time to thank and recognize their sacrifice. You can help honor our men and women of service by donating today. To help construct this special, one-of-a-kind monument, visit thosewhoserve.ca to find out how to donate and more.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We're chatting with Shelley Schell. Shelley, if Council, for one reason or another, wouldn't have approved the budget and sent it back to you, can you let us know what that process would be in such a situation? I've been in Sault Ste. Marie 29 years, and I've seen it happen a few times, but it doesn't really. You being within the finance department, you've probably seen it happen, this kind of scenario.
Well, I haven't personally encountered it in my tenure here, but typically if it would, and I'm just guessing here because I haven't had this happen, Council has to determine what the service level would be. So if they were going to turn the budget back to staff, they would have to give some direction to staff as to where they would want to see service levels changed. And then staff would have to come back, either the department that would be affected as well as the financial side of things too, and we would have to discuss what the financial impacts of that direction is, as well as the risks and the effect on
And I'm saying if the budget is defeated, let's say, you know, we have 10 councillors plus a mayor. If it's defeated 6-5, for example, then you're saying they would have to be specific at where they would want you to relook.
My understanding is, yes, that they would have to give us some sort of direction as to how they wanted it cut, what area they would like us to focus any kind of service level changes on, etc.
Now that changes the timelines, and that would really throw the whole process off course, wouldn't it, if that was to happen?
If it happened at the last minute, and especially in this year where our budget is presented later, it would have potential effects on our statutory dates that we have to have basically our tax rates passed as well as the budget passed, etc.
Now, Council in the last few years since Mayor Provenzano's tenure and in and around there has got more proactive with getting the budget deliberations done quicker. That really does help you and your staff, that rather than leaving it later. Remember, it was like March or April that...
It used to be in March and April when the budget was being deliberated as well as the tax rates, and that's one of the things that I saw too when I came into my position. Coming from the private sector, you always had a budget passed prior to the year starting. So I did find that a little bit different myself. So that was something that was on my radar and that we were moving towards. Council upped the time frame of getting the deliberations done. So we did have 1 year, I think it was 2016, where we had 2 budgets in 1 year. Once we were through that, having the budget done before the end of the year for the next year is a very good practice, a best practice.
And you already have the interim tax amounts sent out, which is that based kind of a little bit on last year, the March and May tax amounts?
The interim levies are actually set out within the Municipal Act, so we don't
Right.
have a lot of say in what
That
they
kind of
can
is
be.
a cut and dry process,
Right,
yeah.
and that's passed through a bylaw through council, and it is based on the previous year's levy.
Right, right. Do you feel that the 0% budget increases are unrealistic in today's economy? We were talking a bit about that before airtime.
Well, having a 0% tax increase means that you can't maintain the same level of service that you did the previous year unless you have significant changes in how you're going to do your business. So to me, it isn't realistic. There's always going to be an increase, just like in your own home budget. There's always increases due to inflation. So we need to look at what is a realistic inflationary increase. That is something that is on our radar. It is something that we're looking at going forward, so we could communicate that better, as well as
Right.
multi-year budgets, so there's not as big a surprises every year for everyone. But no, in my opinion, no, a 0% is not realistic unless you have significant changes in how you're doing your business.
And that happened when I first came to the Sault Ste. Marie in the early 90s. And from what I remember, you do pay for it. If you do it 2-3 years in a row, it's going to catch up with you.
My understanding, and again, I wasn't here during the 1990s working for the city, and city politics wasn't necessarily on my radar in the 1990s either. But my understanding,
you were in the private
yeah,
sector.
it wasn't as big a concern. But my understanding then is that in order to maintain the 0% increase, they cut capital investment. So by cutting capital investment, your infrastructure requirements, such as your roads, your buildings, your community centers, all that infrastructure is being postponed. So it likely would have added to our current infrastructure funding deficit that we have right now. So the roads we weren't having the same type of road maintenance that we have right now. That means there was deferrals, roads were going beyond their useful life and being tried to be maintained, through the operating budget without much success, probably in some cases.
I've got about a few seconds left. Can you just give me a quick answer into, can anything be done with reducing the business taxes?
I assume when you're talking about business taxes, you're talking about the commercial and the industrial property classes. So again, you have to look at the allocation of the levy as a pie. So if you make one piece smaller, another piece is going to get larger, which means there's going to be a transfer. So if we direct a decrease without any kind of changes in growth or anything like that in the assessment, all you're doing is transferring the taxes from the commercial or industrial class onto the other classes, which would be mostly the multi-residential and the residential property classes. So we do look at when we have growth within our community, and we have very limited growth in the city at this point, but we try to balance it a bit so that we can direct a little bit of a decrease to those classes. Again, it's a long-term strategy. If we have growth, it ups that a little bit quicker.
Well, that's right, and you're the first one to stand up and say more growth is good. Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Shelley, for coming in and
Thanks,
talking
Andy.
to
Thanks
us.
for having me.
Thanks very much. That's Civic Affairs for another week. I'm Andy Martens. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Listen to them. Children of the night. Alive! It's alive!
Cozy up this winter with Mio's Furniture Fashions. Add some warmth and comfort to your home with Dimplex electric fireplaces. Now 25% off. Save 20 to 30% off Lazy Boys. Sleep easy with a new Sealy Posturepedic, Stearns and Foster or Tempur-Pedic mattresses and adjustable beds. Now up to 50% off. Shop these and other incredible deals this winter at Mio's Furniture Fashions. Surface before and after the sale. 261 Trunk Road. Where else?
This is ONNtv.